When you're a people pleaser, saying no to people can seem like the most scariest thing, can't it? And when you look at the science, rejection really hurts. It lights up neural circuitry in our brain, in the same area of the brain that we experience pain. What if no could be a boundary that protects both of us? And she said to him, I'm not taking on that project until you deliver on previous promises about this and this project. You know, when you say no, because no is a complete sentence, isn't it? Hi, welcome to the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast, where we get to the source of what makes people brilliant and explore how to eradicate the barriers that stop you from shining. By shining, I mean being at your absolute best in both work and life. You'll hear from business and thought leaders who bear all and share their insider secrets, along with my episodes focused on optimizing your performance, productivity, success, and well-being. My name is Estelle Reid, founder of B, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author of Inner Brilliance, Outer Shine, 10 Antidotes to Imposter Syndrome, Workaholism, and Stress. So, if you're ready to take your work life to the next level, let's begin. So, welcome back. We are going to be covering the please me pattern in this episode. So, imagine the scene. You're in a group project, and the moment you're asked to volunteer for another task, your hand shoots up before you even think twice. You've learned that by saying yes, you earn smiles. My nickname used to be Smiler as a kid. I used to get an extra dollop of mashed potato from the dinner ladies. Protection from disapproval and a sense you belong. When the facilitator asks for volunteers again, you step forward with a practice smile, already drafting your first apology for saying yes too late or not delivering perfectly. Across the room, a teammate quietly requests something you can't meet, and you feel that tug to please them, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. Afterward, you drag your attention back to your own needs, gathering the energy that others seem to draw from your willingness to bend. A soft, almost whispered thought surfaces. What if no could be a boundary that protects both of us? When you're a people pleaser, saying no to people can seem like the most scariest thing, can't it? And I remember one of my very first coachees, she was a newly qualified lawyer. I was working in-house as the head of HR, and she got so much potential. And I could also see that she was creaking under the strain of work. She just got too much on a production line, too much to do. And when I suggested to her, so this isn't coaching when you make suggestions, but we'd had several sessions of going around, and in the end I said, look, would you like me to make a suggestion? She said, yeah. And I said, what if you were to not say yes and just say no? And she said, I can't possibly not please people. And so it's going back to the drowning man with the balloons analogy. So if you've been listening to previous episodes, if you look up the drowning man, and you'll see that there's a man, he's floating above the water. So he's keeping himself afloat with all these balloons. And at the end of each balloon is a pattern of behaviour. And contained in one of those balloons is the please me pattern. And that's what we're focusing on today. And so in that moment, what I realised is that what I was suggesting is just to cut the string on that balloon. And of course, it felt too scary, and she felt that she would go under by starting to say no to people. So, what is the core fear? Where does it come from? It relates to our fear of rejection or abandonment. And so, if you set boundaries or prioritize your own needs, the fear is that you're going to be rejected again, you're going to be abandoned again. And we fear that saying no will damage those relationships or erode our belonging to our tribe. And so the antidote to that becomes this pervasive people pleasing. So in terms of its origins, it comes from this craving or this need for external approval. And it was interesting when I was doing the podcast episode with Linda Blair, an amazing psychologist, writer, and she was saying the thing that makes us different as a species is that we're the only species that can't survive without that our love and care from our parents, basically. So we don't survive. And so if we're unable to maintain their attention or we're rejected by our parents, it's the equivalent of death at a deep-seated level. So the other interesting thing as well, so I was doing some research for my TEDx talk, and the talk itself is around belonging. And I was making this connection between belonging and when we don't belong, we feel rejected. And when you look at the science, rejection really hurts. It lights up neural circuitry in our brain in the same area of the brain that we experience pain. So when you touch a hot stove, that pain is designed to make us move our hand away from the stove. And in the same way, because rejection is a survival threat, we experience physical sensations and it's designed to make us change our behaviour. And if children don't experience or get what they need growing up, then they turn into people pleasers. So examples might be you got praise from a teacher, a caregiver, or you were rewarded for compliance, or it might be that you experienced rejection from a group. So maybe a friendship group, maybe you were excluded from a sports team or whatever it is. But all of that, those are signals that threaten our survival, in essence. And if the other way or the other childhood experience that can trigger this is being told that you're a good boy or a good girl, reinforcing that compliance and realizing that you get the attention you need from your parents. But equally, if you step out of line, there then being consequences for that. So, for example, I've havened many leaders' experiences of making a request for something as a child, so maybe asking for sweets, and then being taken off somewhere. And back in the 70s, this is what they used to do, having your legs slapped. So that instantly gives a message to the child that one, don't ask for your needs to be met. And two, when you do ask for your needs to be met, the consequence is you experience pain and rejection. So this then reinforces the need for people-pleasing behaviour. I guess with this episode, I'm hoping to challenge some of those things for you so that you can begin to go, how logic is that? But also to reflect and think about what are the ways that actually I can just get rid of this for good. Let's have a look what else I was going to tell you about. So there's also this thing around avoiding conflict as well, because when we're in conflict, we're not pleasing. And when we're in conflict, we're at risk of being excommunicated from our tribe, from being rejected. So the solution is to be conflict avoidant. So this causes all sorts of problems for us growing up as adults. So at work, it looks like difficulty saying no. So just like the lawyer example I gave, but also over apologizing for our existence. And again, I remember working with one amazingly brilliant being who within the first 20 seconds had probably apologized 20 times for everything. And all that does is it undermines who we are as people, doesn't it? But it sends the wrong message to our unconscious mind and damages our self-worth. Now, I'm all for apologising when an apology is required, but not for the inconsequential things. In terms of how the people-pleasing looks when it comes to our relationships, so there's often an imbalance in relationships. So this will look like either in personal relationships, so friends, family, partner, whatever else, but also it can appear at work as well, where you are the one doing all the giving and there's no receiving in return. And so what builds up over time is a resentment for it feels like the seesaw's tipped. You're the one putting all the effort in and the other people around you are letting you put all the effort in. And I talk about it in my book. I refer to it as like responsibility gap filling. So we fill the gap, just as that case study I gave you at the start. If you're the one that's always volunteering in meetings, yes, I'll take that task on. You fill in the responsibility gap for others. On a mental health level, it damages self-esteem, as I've already said, but we also become dependent on others' opinions of us. And if you've read my book, you'll heard me talk about that scenario when I was resigning from my full-time employment. This was like 20 years ago. And I'd gone down to see my boss, and I really loved my boss. He was a great boss. We had a really good relationship. And I was sat, I'm going to demonstrate if you're watching, I was sat twizzling my chair like this in his office. And I can't even remember what I was saying to him, but his response to me was, "Oh, you've just come down here for a tickle under the chin, haven't you?" Not in a weird way, just in a, "I see you. You need me to approve of whatever you've done." And I thought in that moment, blimey O'Reilly, I'm not going to have anyone who's going to approve of me when I run my own business. That's going to have to come from within. And so one of the things I did is I created I referred to it as a belief wall, and it was a cork board behind my office door. So I used to keep the office door open so nobody could see it. And every time someone said something nice to me, I used to pin it on the cork board just as a reminder. And until eventually I thought, I've just got to be able to do this for myself. I've got to approve of myself. And the metaphor I use in my book is there's a sailing metaphor, so it's all about the sea and all this jazz. But I say it's the equivalent of being lost at sea. So we're lost at sea and we're waiting for someone who's on the side to throw us a life aid so that we survive and we keep our head above water. And those life aids are compliments, they are pat on the back, it's everything that comes from everyone else, everybody else's opinion. When in reality, we can't control when people throw us those life aids, can we? We've got to be able to do it for ourselves. And one of the things that I encourage in my book, but also just generally with clients, is to develop an inner captain, to have a better relationship with yourself. And I was saying, my husband and I have been out for lunch today, and I was saying in the car that I know when I do a crap job. And do I rewind the tape? Yes. Do I give myself a hard time about it? Yes, momentarily. But then I dust myself off and I go, what can I learn from it? And move on and take alternative action. We call it having agency, don't we? It's the coaching mindset. But what I also know when I do a good job, and I remind myself of that, and I do that through my journaling process. So I develop my inner captain rather than an inner critic, my inner captain. I acknowledge the stuff that I'm doing well. I work through the stuff I'm not doing so well, and then I learn and I grow from it. So you can download that complimentary journal. If you head over to estellereed.com, and read is READ, you'll see, I think there's a heading called resources. You can download it there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see there's a QR code. Scan that and you'll see there's a link for, I think it's called the Inner Brilliance How to Shine Journal. But yeah, maintaining that habit of, rather than looking outside ourselves for that recognition, being dependent on other people's opinions of us, we do that for ourselves. And that's not about closing ourselves off to feedback or anything like that, not at all. It's just being a bit more resilient. So one of the client examples I was going to share with you so that you could hook onto this is that I was working with one individual who was at flight risk. So often when I work with clients and leaders, they've had enough. They've been saying yes when they should have been saying no. They've got too much on the plate, and they think the best solution is just to go and find another job elsewhere. I know that pattern because that was me. I changed jobs 4 times for the exact same reasons. I blame the employer. Oh, I've got too much to do. In reality, it was me. I was just saying yes when I should have said no. So this person came to me. They were a real people pleaser. Their boss was a bit of a tyrant, had a bit of a reputation, and for being demanding and all that kind of thing. Anyway, long story short, we had to go digging around to find where the root cause of this. And so the way that we do that, we go back, because I'm talking about using havening again. This is how we cured it. So you go back in a person's timeline, typically age 0 to 7 is where we look for these events. So we're looking for, what are those first occasions where that behaviour attached, where that behavioural coping strategy. So as we're focusing on pleasing, so for them, it was all to do with pleasing a parent that could be violent, shouty, aggressive, unpredictable. And this particular leader learnt to keep their parent calm and to avoid all of that horribleness by pleasing them. But of course, this strategy then continued into adult life and was causing her problems. Long story short, after about, I think we were on session 3, and she came to session and she said, I don't think my boss knows what's hit him. And this particular boss, he was quite manipulative, a bit narcissistic, making promises, not following on through on promises. So that combination of having a tricky boss and then someone who was a people pleaser, it's ideal for someone that's narcissistic. In fact, narcissistic folk look out for people pleasers because they can get their wants, needs, and desires sorted. Anyway, so yeah, gone into work and said this boss had tried to give them another project to crack on with, pile up more to-dos on the to-do list. And she said to him, I'm not taking on that project until you deliver on previous promises about this and this project. And the narcissistic boss was taken aback a little bit and stood back. But there were no consequences because this person was talking logically, factually. What was he going to do? Sack her for being straightforward and honest? Hello, can you do me a favour? Would you mind either liking or subscribing wherever it is that you listen? So maybe that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, because that will help us to keep going and keep growing. The other thing that would be really helpful is if you could share it with someone that would also benefit from the content. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Right, let's get on. So anyway, so that was great. No longer at flight risk. But the other benefit this person had from resolving those particular pleasing triggers is that this people pleasing was pervasive, not just at work, but in her home life. And so she was the one always giving lifts, always doing things for her friends, always being the chief organizer. And all of a sudden, she recognized, she could see, no wonder she was so busy because she was doing everything for everyone. This has got connections with the superhuman type of imposter syndrome. Anyway, she said to me, and I've put some boundaries in with them as well. And there's going to be more give and take. And her friends initially, they grumbled a little bit about it. Oh, aren't you going to organise it? But in the end, things settled down. And that's the point. that when we make changes, sometimes people don't like those changes, be honest. Some people will drop by the wayside. But do you know what? If that person has been taken advantage of, it's no bad thing. And those that really want to stay in your life, they will stay in your life. That's my experience. How do we overcome this, folks? The mindset is, so the mindset shift is, it's this self-validation, which I've already mentioned, journaling, download it, practice using an inner captain rather than an inner critic. And we know that don't expect instant results with that type of work. We know it takes the average person 66 days to embed a new habit or behaviour. So that's 66 occasions of repeating that habit of journaling, developing the inner captain. That process will talk you through, it will get you to, 1, change your inner dialogue, 2, work through problems, but 3, get you to acknowledge all the stuff that you are good at. So you do self-validate, and it's one of the antidotes to imposter syndrome as well. I will include a note in the show notes, so you've got a link to download that. The other tools available are to go on assertiveness training. I can remember going on assertiveness training. Ken and Kate Back, what a brilliant book that is. I can highly recommend their stuff. I also went on their course when I must have been about 23, and the techniques are really good. So if you want structure for this is how I say no, this is how I give feedback, all that sort of stuff, definitely read it. The challenge for me, and the only way I really resolved it, so being brave enough to say no, don't want to do this, have an opinion, was by getting rid of those people-pleasing triggers. So again, using havening. And then it just felt a lot easier. It was just much more natural to be able to say, no, sorry, I don't want to do that. And to get comfortable with the silence, you know, when you say no, because no is a complete sentence, isn't it? So yeah, definitely can recommend using techniques like EFT, havening, get rid of the trigger, and then it's so much easier. And then you can use, obviously, models. So one of the great models I love is the SBI model of feedback. I add an R. So let's say you've got to give someone some difficult feedback, they've been offloading too much stuff on you, taking advantage or whatever else. The SBI model, so if you look it up, it stands for situation, behaviour, impact. And then we add the R for request, what you would like them to do. So you talk about the situation. So when you gave me X, Y, and Z project, you promised that I wouldn't need to take on any other projects at that point. So that's the situation, the behaviour. Since I've taken on X, Y, and Z project, I have noticed that you've asked me to take on 2 other projects. Impact. The impact of this is I'm really stressed and overloaded, and I'm really starting to wonder whether I should look for another job. Do you think you'd honestly say that? Probably not. But I'm really stressed out and I've got too much to do and I don't know what priorities are. Request. What I request of you is that, can we stick to what we agreed originally on the meeting on X, Y, and Z, where you wouldn't give me any further projects until these projects were completed? So SBI+R, recommend that tool. And then the other really important thing is under boundaries. So setting yourself some clear boundaries. These behaviours, they can be so ingrained in us, so unconscious. So we know that 95%, sometimes up to 99% of our behaviour is unconscious, driven by our autopilot. So that requires you to raise awareness of, actually, where am I not looking after my needs? Where am I not managing my boundaries? And again, that's where your journaling comes in, to raise awareness of, today I felt a bit resentful because I was the one left organising everything, blah, blah, blah. Or today I feel like the relationship is a little bit imbalanced. So I'm going to choose to do X, Y, and Z. But being clear about what's acceptable for you. So where maybe there is boundary creep, so where maybe people are taking advantage of you because you are a people pleaser, and then deciding what you're going to do about that and then sticking to it. So as for the micro action for this episode, what you could do, this is what I did, is you look up some assertive phrases. Instagram's really great for this. If you've got a difficult person or a boundary breaker or maybe a narcissist that you've got to deal with, looking up some useful phrases, some one-liners that you can have in your back pocket so that you're ready, and that will again help you reinforce your boundaries. On the resources front, I've already mentioned Ken and Kate Back. Read their material. They've got an Assertiveness at Work book. That's dead good. And then in chapter 7 of my own book, the chapter title is called Run a Tight Ship. And you can, of course, learn about havening as well in my book. But yeah, you can listen to it for free. If you see series 3, I read out all of my book there. But running a tight ship is all about your boundaries and being assertive. So that's it for the people pleasing episode. The next episode we're going to be exploring is the be perfect pattern. So looking forward to sharing that with you. Now, the core belief with the be perfect is being exposed as imperfect or unworthy if you make a mistake. The fear of criticism or being seen as a failure drives over polishing and avoidance of risk. So take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estellereed.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Reed, executive coach, speaker and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.